Welcome everyone to our first Elevate of 26. I hope everyone's had a really good start to the new year. How about you? But January absolutely flew by, and February's not showing any signs of slowing down. Can we move to the next slide?
Yes.
Whoever's driving.
I'm driving. Yeah.
So before we get into the agenda, just a little bit of housekeeping for the session. Can I ask you all to ensure your microphones are turned off unless you're speaking, of course, and please use the raise hand button if you want to share, and the reaction button, obviously, if you want to as we go. Questions for the upcoming Q&A session with Liz can go in the chat, and then we'll pick them up from there for our guests. And just to let everybody know that the session will be recorded.
Okay. Let me just remind myself. Sorry. Here we go.
Okay. Yep. So welcome. It's really exciting to have everyone together again, and of course a really warm welcome to any new faces that we might have. I've reflected loads back on our face-to-face session in November at Ibstock, and what a really brilliant day it was, hearing from Jo Shepherd and from Katie Litchfield. I thought they were both complete powerhouses. I loved them. The imposter syndrome topic really seemed to resonate, so on that basis we decided to draw on that theme and dig a bit deeper into a specific imposter type that we all identified with, the superhuman imposter. So the agenda for today's session is as follows. In a second, we'll be hearing from our amazing guest, Liz Taylor, and that will include a Q&A. And then we'll move into the Superhuman Imposter workshop, which will include a few breakout sessions. So the recording, I don't think, includes the breakout.
We'll take the breakout, any conversations out of the recording. Yeah.
Okay. That's great.
Nikki, do you want to mention about Max as well?
Oh yes, of course. Yeah. So Maxine was supposed to be presenting part of this alongside me today. Unfortunately, she is, and rather unusually, she's not very well. Sadly, so she was really sad not to be with us today, but she'll get the recording, and hopefully she'll get well soon. So unless anyone's got any comments or questions around how the day's gonna be structured, the next couple of hours is structured, let's move in to our guests. So I am delighted to introduce Liz Taylor. Welcome, Liz, and thank you for your time. Liz is Chief Commercial Officer at Highborn Group, joined in May 2025. She previously worked at Asda, M&S and Morrison's, and is a big supporter of creating diverse teams and passionate about supporting others in their career development. Excited to hear from her. Hi, Liz.
Sorry, Liz, I'm going to take the presentation off so we can all see you.
No, that's fine. A picture of myself is somewhat off-putting when talking, so I'm pleased about that. And please know, on phone trading standards, it might be 1 or 2 years out of date, and it certainly predates having children, so I do look significantly younger, even though it might not be that many years ago. Anyway, thank you for the kind introduction, and a massive thank you for inviting me along to this session. It's a real privilege to join you this afternoon. I work closely with Maxine, and she's filled me in on the various sessions and some of the work that's been done by this group. So it genuinely is a pleasure to be amongst you today. So I'm going to give you a bit of a career history, share a few learnings from my journey so far. And as introduced there, I'm not a building, plumbing, heating aficionado. My career has not been built in this industry, so I've only just started out. So as per the slide, I joined Highborn in May. My career up until that point was exclusively in food retailing, actually. So I think hopefully, whilst it is a different industry, it will still resonate with a number of people, because I think there are just so many commonalities, and I've certainly found that, having ventured out of food for the first time in over 2 decades. So there's questions, opportunities at the end. Please feel free to ask anything that you want to ask. I'm more than happy to try and answer anything. If it's a bit tricky, I'll pass it on to someone else. But other than that, please do feel free to make it an interactive session. So I guess I'm joining you from a small village in North Yorkshire this afternoon. So I live in just outside of York with my wife Kate, our 2 children, Annabelle and William, who are 5 and almost 4, as he keeps telling me, and our dog. So I do spend quite a lot of time on the M1, so the head office for Highbourne and City Plumbing down in Crick. So I've chalked up, I reckon, 30,000 miles in this job so far. I guess I'll come back to sort of how I came to be in the plumbing and heating business in a second, but I guess I'll just start chronologically. And I actually ended up in the food industry by accident. By virtue of messing my A-levels up, if I'm brutally honest. So I'd set out, interviewed, got places at a variety of different universities to study dentistry, duly taken the 3 sciences that you needed to be able to go and study dentistry, and then fell fairly miserably short of the grade required. So that, I guess, for me was a real inflection point in my life, actually. You set out with clear career ambitions, only to, it felt like, pretty much fall at the first hurdle. I did the only sensible thing, which was to go straight out after receiving the grades and go and play golf for the afternoon. And I think, having reflected on what had actually played out, I took the decision actually to just keep going forward. There was an opportunity to go and resit and try and get the grades that I needed, but I opted not to do that in the end, and instead opted to do a food science degree at Leeds. So the opportunity to go to university, be away from home, and food science appealed to me actually because it was quite varied. I have quite a short attention span and quite like the variety. So there was a lot of different subjects within that. So I thought I'll go and do food science at Leeds. And then by virtue of geography, I ended up going and doing a placement at Asda. And I'll give you a feel for my age with this next comment. I went and did a placement at Asda the year after Walmart had acquired it, and ended up doing some project management, and just absolutely loved food retailing. Really found something that piqued my interest. I'm a passionate foodie. I eat and drink probably far too much, but it's a real interest of mine. And actually, to land, albeit accidentally, into something that I found so interesting was brilliant and very, very fortunate. And I've been again, the comments around building diverse teams and passionately supporting the careers of others. I've worked with some wonderful people over the years, and I've had some amazing support, line management, mentorship, and things like this are really a bit, for me, how can I give a bit of that back? Because you can never repay the person who passed it on to you, because they're invariably more senior, more experienced than you. So I guess this is my way of repaying some of that support that I've had over the years. So accidentally ended up in Asda, and then in the end, they just offered me a role as a trainee buyer. It was the glamorous area of packet soups, tinned hot dogs, and tuna and salmon. And that was how I started out. And over my time at Asda, I ended up doing a variety of different food categories, different industries. Very fortunate to travel as well. So saw some interesting places in the world, sometimes in abattoirs, which may not be for everyone, I accept. But nevertheless, the opportunity to do business in different countries was really intriguing as well, particularly for someone in their 20s and very early on in their career. I got to the point at Asda where I did 9 years, and I had a bit of an itch to go, probably more from a personal perspective, to actually live in London. And I talked to M&S previously. The role wasn't quite at the right time, wasn't quite at the right level, and so we'd agreed to park it. But interestingly, I always kept in touch with the lady who headed up recruitment there, and eventually in 2010, the right role came along, and I did go and do that. And again, that was really leaning towards that passion for food. As you can imagine, I'm sure a lot of you, the beauty of food is everyone's a customer, everyone's got a point of view. And, you all know Marks and Spencer for the quality and food innovation that it provides. And I really wanted to spend a bit more time in that, as there was, it's quite commoditized, the areas that I bought. So I really wanted that flair for food experience that M&S is just absolutely second to none at. If I'm totally honest, my first 6 months were a cultural shock to the system. And I can say that now without, it's a very different business now, 15 years on. I did spend, if I'm honest, a number of moments thinking I've made a terrible mistake here because it was so different. So I've got really clearly laid out in my head why I wanted to go, what I wanted to learn, the things I wanted to focus on, but hadn't quite prepared myself for what a cultural departure it was. So after probably knuckling down for 6 to 9 months and, you know, sticking with it, actually I really began to love it. And if I look back now, I think it was hugely helpful. In a big four retailer like an Asda or a Tesco or a Sainsbury's, the commercial team are making all of the decisions. That is not true in Marks and Spencer. So it really knocked off quite a lot of corners that I had, because you couldn't achieve anything without genuine teamwork, genuine collaboration, and influencing the right stakeholders to get the right outcome. Now, at points that can make it slow, it can make it frustrating, but I can honestly say it has definitely made me a better general manager, having gone through that experience, because, you know, you have to, it forces you to consider so many different points of view. So I absolutely loved my time at M&S, but then the union to come back to Yorkshire was too great. And my reason for going to Morrison's, probably not many people know this, interesting fact. Morrison's actually manufactures an awful lot of its own food. So it's got 19 manufacturing sites. And I wanted to lean into that slightly more operational side. So I've done product, I've done, you know, the sort of core buying. Actually, I wanted to spread my experience into the operations side, and that was great. So I joined as a category director in produce, and then after about 10 or 11 months, the structure was changed, and I took on the broader role of fresh food commercial director, which was all of those counters, basically anything in a chiller, and then areas like bakery as well. And that, again, I go back to the point I made around doing food science. I really loved that role because of the variety, because of the different industries. And I spent actually the last 5 years of my career at Morrison's doing that. And I think, barring a couple of things that were tacked on, it pretty much remained the same role for that 5 years, which is the longest I've done any individual role. And I think that really taught me the benefit and the power of the repetition, you know, the establishment of clear plans and the opportunity to execute, see them through, review them and reiterate and improve them and build on them. So that was really enjoyable, and it felt like the breadth of it was always, there was always something different. There are certain categories in food where you don't get the same year twice anyway. Things like produce, where, well, look at the weather. I mean, it's just, I don't know what it's like where any of you are, but I suspect it's probably raining. That means that your sourcing is incredibly different in any, you know, it can even be week to week, month to month. So hugely stimulating. I think looking back on all of those roles in food, I probably learned the most when it was the hardest. So my first 6 months in M&S learning the culture, but then my first 6 months doing fresh foods for the first time, which was technically very difficult to anything very different, to anything that I'd done previously. And I always look back on those moments in my career thinking I've learned far more when it's been difficult than actually when it's easy and you're delivering 5% year-on-year growth, profits ahead of budget, no issues, customer growth, happy days. It doesn't always feel like that at the time. Actually, it feels the most difficult, the most uncomfortable. But if you can almost give yourself a bit of an out-of-body experience, it's really worth reflecting on. So I've tried to do that, and, you know, as you can probably imagine, stepping into an entirely different industry. I am not on the gas safe register. I have not been recruited for my knowledge of toilets, boilers, anything like that. You know, the first few months in this role have been equally as challenging as that, you know, moving from packets and boxes into fresh foods for the first time. I think my advice in going and doing something quite different is have a go. Just have a go, because you have to always reflect on all of your own personal achievements that have got you to this point in your career. And those are the characteristics, the strengths, the areas that you can really lean on when times are tough and when you've got to perhaps lean into something else that is not quite as familiar and requires a lot more learning. And, you know, I've, in all honesty, coming into a plumbing and heating merchant is technically very challenging. I don't have any product knowledge other than, of course, we all have our own bits and pieces of plumbing, and I was fortunate enough, I say fortunate enough, it was fairly painful in the end, but I did a 2.5-year renovation. So my exposure to plumbing and heating has been more of a hobby and or a necessity. So that's been quite uncomfortable. And I think what I would advise anyone in that position is use the people around you and don't be embarrassed. Don't feel that you should know something that you don't, because the truth is you don't. And actually just have the confidence and the strength of character to just say, do you know what, I don't know what that 3-letter acronym is. I don't know what that piece of kit does. I don't know anything about that supplier. It's okay. Just be comfortable with the learning journey, but always reflect on those core strengths that you do have. So it's been a bit of a roller coaster the last almost 10 months now. And I've enjoyed it immensely. The big motivation for me joining Highborn was the people and the culture, actually. So through the interview process, I met a whole bunch of the senior team, and I was really struck by the lack of hierarchy, the openness, the willingness to share and collaborate. And that's absolutely what I found within the organisation. So actually, as a complete outsider, it's been a nice business to settle into. Now, it's slightly tempered with the fact that the industry is a little bit challenged at the moment, and none of us are immune to that. But nevertheless, it makes it an awful lot easier to succeed in an environment where it feels genuinely like people do want you to succeed. And there are a few familiar faces on the attendees list here, so a few of you will hopefully that will resonate with. But it's been difficult, challenging. In some ways, more difficult and challenging than I expected, but in other ways, actually a lot easier than I perhaps anticipated. The other big thing for me in terms of learning has been that network. So, being the person who probably has the relationships, probably has the experience, probably knows who to phone up in any given category, in any given issue, I've now been catapulted into the world where I don't have these contacts. So it's been actually great, and I think a really positive reflection on this industry, that I've been made to feel so welcome, and been involved with some great supplier conversations and continue to do so. So I think it is really positive that actually someone like me, a complete outsider, can come into this industry and have that experience. So hopefully you feel a bit like that too, really. I think I guess reflecting on mine, people talk about squiggly career journeys. Mine hasn't been that squiggly. It's sort of just gone a bit like that at the last minute. It's been very, very linear, actually, up until that point. But I think, don't be afraid of taking that leap of faith. And my mother-in-law often says this, actually. Say yes and figure out how afterwards, because you'll learn so much in that journey. And that was really what I did in the end. The motivation for coming to Highborn was, the opportunity to do a bigger role in a smaller business. And that's been absolutely fascinating to have more exposure, to understand more in a more detailed way, the internal machinations of how an organisation works, really. But I think when you're picking through your career and having to get to, because we all get to points where we need to make decisions, I think just be really, really clear and thoughtful about why you're doing what you're doing and what you hope to achieve if you do want to make a change. And do keep pulling yourself back to that. I think someone once said to me as well, because I did resign from a role at Asda, classic mid-20s, thinking you were far better than you actually were, far more experienced than you actually had. And being a bit disenfranchised with the business. I think making a decision that is quite pivotal, that involves a change, do it when you're in the right frame of mind. Don't do it in a rage. Don't do it because you're cross about something, but actually do it very thoughtfully and in a really considerate way. So that's a bit about my career journey. I said I'd just touch on, obviously this session's about imposter syndrome, and I guess some reflections on where I've suffered from it. So I think I talk particularly women, but not exclusively women. Actually, a lot of men suffer from exactly the same crises of confidence, and I think the common thread is almost every single person thinks they invented it, thinks they're the only person who feels like that, And it's just simply not true. It's simply not true. So I think probably, moments in my career where I've really felt like, oh gosh, should I be in this meeting? Should I be the person giving this presentation? Should I be leading on this particular initiative? Actually build your confidence by talking to people. It's very, very rare. I can't think of a single example in my career where I've asked someone for help and they've said no. And actually, people are quite flattered when you ask them for help as well. So do that. Again, it's not a reflection on your capability or your competence. Actually, it's real strength of character to be able to reach out and ask for that help. A bit of a tip, and some people some people always laugh at me when I do this. If I have a notebook, because I'm still haven't made the digital transition fully yet, I write at the back and at the front. And I find it quite helpful sometimes just to keep a log of when something's gone quite well. So I think we are naturally inclined to reflect on the things that haven't gone terribly well and all of the things that we could have done better. And actually, there's a real sanity check that you should have that just allows you to reflect on the things that have gone really well, that have been brilliant, that you've received, masses of positive feedback around. And to just have that to glance back at actually is a real confidence boost as well. So I think just a bit of a practical tip that someone recommended to me actually, and I would pass on, and I have done it and do continue to write at the back of my book on certain topics as well. I think practicing things, very often people find big presentations very overwhelming and very difficult. Just practice. And always remember, the audience generally doesn't know what you were going to say. So if you forget something, don't worry about it. They haven't got a clipboard ticking the things off. They don't know any of that. And, try as far as you can to enjoy those sorts of experiences. But I can honestly say, the more you do it, the more uncomfortable you make yourself feel, the more comfortable you get with feeling uncomfortable. And you'll always get that adrenaline rush, and you'll always get that rush of blood, but that's okay. That keeps you on your toes. That's a good thing, and that will make you perform a lot better. But practice, particularly in those sorts of environments. And they do go wrong sometimes. I remember at an M&S conference, we had 1,200 people in Wembley, and I was delivering a presentation, and you wouldn't believe this, Eminem was rehearsing in the actual stadium itself, and whatever he was doing was interfering with the infrared. So it just kept telling the production team to keep clicking my slides on. And I could just see my presentation racing away with me. And the only thing, I often do this, I have a bit of a rule of take your job seriously, not yourself. I just remember standing up there thinking, this is horrifying. This is the worst thing that could possibly ever happen to anybody. And in the end, I just made a joke, and the audience laughed. It completely diffused it, and you just move on. But the reality is, unfortunately, stuff happens. It's okay. It's not the end of the world. Just live with it and move on. I think a few other bits. Don't constantly strive for perfection. It's never going to be perfect. We don't operate in that sort of world. There is a bit of better done than perfect that I would always say. Otherwise, you just end up hamstrung and suffering from complete and utter inertia. Now, that doesn't mean you have to do everything yourself, and that's really important. That actually the art of delegation is really an art. So that is something to be practiced. But just get stuff done, and if it's not quite right, you'll always have the opportunity, generally speaking, to go back and tweak and change. But I'll be a big believer in taking action rather than just waiting for it all to land absolutely perfectly, because it invariably it doesn't really. And I think the final bit is just setting yourself those boundaries and making sure that you're comfortable, and whether that be work-life balance, whether that be working location, whatever that might be, just be really clear on your distinctions between work and personal life, and try where possible. Again, you won't always get it right. I have very many days where I feel like a terrible employee, and very many days where I feel like a terrible parent. We'll all have moments like that. The only thing I would say about those is just try and do better tomorrow. And most of the time you'll be completely wrong, by the way, as well. We're all trying to do our best in what can be quite a challenging and frequently changing environment. But I think probably the overarching thing is get your people around you, get those people that you can lean on and support, that you can chat about stuff. Sometimes that might be outside of your organization. That's okay as well, as long as you're not giving away any sort of company confidential information, of course. Actually, it's quite good to chat those things through. And I've certainly, over the years of my career, and still do it today, will call up people that have got nothing to do. They probably know even less about plumbing and heating than I do, but I still chat to them about stuff. And, I think that's probably the biggest bit of advice. Find those people who are good, who will challenge your thinking. Don't go with someone who's completely like-minded. Get someone who actually will push you and prod you and ask you a few open-ended questions just to try and get you on the right track. So a few minutes, I've probably spoken for longer than I was supposed to, so apologies for that. I've seen a few questions coming, pinging in, so I don't know, is somebody moderating or yes? So I'll hand over to you, Anthea, or...
No, I'll if you like, I'll just
perfect.
Read them out. There's only 3 so far, but people got questions, please put them in the chat box, or once we finish with these 3, we can move to hands up. So Nikki, you started with a question. Is there anything you'd wish you'd said yes to in the past, but you didn't? It's an interesting one, bearing in mind we're going to be talking about imposter syndrome and superhuman imposter.
That is a really good question. I would say nothing major, but I'm a natural introvert. So if you do a Myers-Briggs test on me, I will be off the chart introvert. I have to coach myself to do what I do presentations, be in big groups, and it can be quite tiring. For those of you who that Myers-Briggs personality type will resonate with, you'll perhaps understand a bit about what I mean. So probably the things that I haven't said yes to that I should have done and perhaps do regret are quite a lot of networking. So I'd probably be, particularly when I'm away a fair bit in the week as well, I probably lean towards no thank you. And I probably know deep down that I should be doing those sorts of things as well. So I do them from time to time. Don't get me wrong. I don't go and sit in a cupboard when I get home and, rock myself to sleep or anything like that. But I do know probably I should do more of that and don't.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And then Jen, you can't hide, can you, Jen? How do you talk yourself
this
down?
This might not be a difficult one from Jen, is it?
Yeah, well, she should come on and say hello, but but she's probably trying to hide. Come on, Jen. Just you ask it direct.
Fine question. So anybody that knows me, this will not come as a surprise. I am very led by my emotions, very impetuous. So when I get angry, I do just do those things. So my question was kind of, how do you talk yourself down from the anger to give yourself the time and space to make the right decision?
Sometimes it literally is just a walk away. I'm not particularly driven by my emotions. So sometimes if someone really pushes my buttons, I must confess I find it quite difficult. But again, that introversion actually helps with that, actually, because I'll probably be less inclined to be very forthright. I'd probably be more inclined to go away and reflect anyway. And often if I've given an impulsive reaction, I will often regret it, and the regret I don't particularly like, so I'll probably just try and give it a moment. And I think often as well you can find yourself in a situation where it's slightly circumstantial. It's how you've received the information, how you've taken that question, how you've interpreted it. And sometimes actually when you go away and reflect, it's perhaps not as bad as you might have felt in that particular moment. So I think actually just that breather, and sometimes it can be almost a mental breather. Sometimes it does need to be okay. And I have closed down meetings where you almost reach in a bit of an impasse with something, you just not getting anywhere. I think I find it perfectly okay to just say, look, let's just pause on that. We'll come back to it if you're not getting anywhere.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jen. And Holly, it said, what's your top tip for switching off?
I quite like doing something that requires utter concentration, because it just means I don't think about anything else. So I quite like just going and reading a book with my children, or doing a puzzle or something like that. Leave your phone nowhere near, because it just that doesn't help you switch off. I do the occasional run, not very often at the moment, if I'm totally honest, but I quite like running. That's quite a good decompress as well. And one of my favourites, and I don't do it nearly enough, is I quite like playing the piano, because if I'm reading music, I literally can't concentrate on anything else. So, and it helps me keep my hand in as well, because I'm determined to try and encourage my children to also play a musical instrument.
Brilliant, thank you for that. And we've got Laura. Oh, you go, Holly, like that answer. Laura says, she says, I found that my best feature when starting in a new place is genuine curiosity about what people do, how and why they do it, etc. What would you say is your strongest feature, and what features have you identified in others?
Oh, blimey. That's a great series of questions. I think that's not just one. I totally agree with that point. Actually, I think curiosity is absolutely crucial in any walk of life, in any role. Actually, even just in day-to-day life. Actually, having a conversation with someone in a social setting. Actually, I think that curiosity is really important. How frustrating is it when you're having a conversation with somebody and you feel like they know absolutely nothing about me and I know everything about them. And that even in a social setting is just I sort of walk away just thinking, okay, fine, I'm probably all right with it, but it does strike you as a bit odd. What was it, Anthony?
What's your strongest feature? What's your strongest feature? And what features have you identified in others? So what's your big strength, I guess?
What's my big strength? I'm quite decisive, and I'm quite commercially minded, and I won't shy away from a difficult decision. So all of that sort of combined, that's probably where I'll cut through. And I have a really annoying habit, and I'm told it's annoying by the people I work with. I remember a bunch of stuff as well. So that can be my superpower that I rely on occasionally, because I can just remember. I'll be able to pull a fact from that meeting 2 weeks last Tuesday. And the fact that I can tell you what the PLUs, which is the codes on the vegetables when you key them in at the till, the fact that I can tell you them from Safeway in 1996, I can still tell you a selection of vegetables in that will tell you that my recall on useless facts is quite helpful in those conversations, because if you can rely on the facts, it really makes you confident about decision making without having to thumb through a bunch of things. So I'm quite lucky in that. Didn't go very well for my A levels as per the start of my career journey, but can't win them all. What have I spotted in others? I've spotted a huge amount of empathy in other people, and I'm always aware of it, because I think sometimes I think I could do better here, because I can be a bit decisive and a bit fact-based. Actually, sometimes I think I could have done better in terms of understanding why that person was going about that in a particular way, what they were thinking. So I always admire people who can instinctively and quickly hone in on that. Hopefully I'm not absolutely awful at it, but I would always try and do better as far as that's concerned. And I'm actually, and I probably say this because I don't have it as well. Actually, I think the people who've got a really good, well-established product and technical knowledge, I'm super impressed by at the moment. But as I say, I think that's slightly circumstantial given where I find myself.
Brilliant. Okay, so there's no more questions to the chat, but if anyone wants to put one in or put their hand up, please say so. But I've got one while we'll give people some thinking time. So you've been in the industry, so whether we call it construction or plumbing or heating or whatever, since May last year. What's the biggest cultural differences that you've seen between food and the current industry? And I'm interested to know the positives and the things that you notice, oh, that's great, and the things you notice, oh my God, that needs to change.
What are the cultural differences? I think there are a few similarities. I think it's quite a relationship-driven industry in the same way that food often was, and I think that's business all over. That is not, I suspect, unique to food and/or construction, plumbing, heating, etc. So I think the relationships are really important. At the end of the day, people, you want to do business with decent people, and and therefore actually being a decent human and building good relationships, I think is really important. So that's definitely a similarity. I'm really quite surprised at the level of stuff that happens that is, I guess, extracurricular, as I might describe it. So golf stuff, skiing trips, all of that is completely and utterly alien to me. That did not exist in the food industry and hasn't, probably did maybe 20 years ago, but that is quite different. So that appears to me to be almost a very odd dynamic. And having come from an industry which has got increasingly more legislated and higher levels of governance, I find that a bit odd, if I'm totally honest.
Yeah.
And again, I think, it needs to be, things need to be done that actually are not exclusive and are, and are not things that mean a bunch of people can't participate because they don't play golf or they don't ski or whatever. So I think, absolutely, I'd be a big, massive advocate for building relationships. And that doesn't, I'm not suggesting for a second it all needs to be done in the formality of an office. There's absolutely, there's a lot to be said for having great dinners and, a bit of a meeting of minds in a more informal setting. I think that's great for relationship building, but I do find the other stuff a bit curious, if I'm totally honest. I think sometimes I'm not sure it leads to the best outcome in every instance, but I'm sure that would be a very unpopular statement to make if I were to make that in a different setting.
No, I think it's certainly, I think we can all resonate with some of that, what you've just said there, and it doesn't help with the inclusion piece, does it? Some of the extracurricular activities.
No, and I say that actually as someone who plays golf and skis. I do like doing that, but it just wouldn't. I find it a bit odd in that sort of work setting. Personally. I see I've got a few more questions, so let's go back to the chat. So Debbie said, "Are you worried about when you get to the menopause stage that this could affect you?" I just keep saying I'm not doing that. That is the position I've taken on the menopause. And I'm 45 years old, so I might be kidding myself.
Like that.
But as you can imagine, given in our house, it's quite a topic of conversation. So my wife is 18 months older than I am, so it is very, very topical at home, very topical within our friendship groups as well. Do I worry about it? No, I don't worry about it. But equally, I'll be in conversations. There's some symptoms that, if I'm honest, I may be suffering from, but I choose not to necessarily recognise them. And that's just honestly my way of navigating through all of that. I think what I would say, having worked with women who are going through that period in their life, again, just be open and talk to people, because I think if people understand, and it can be a bit of a difficult topic, but I remember being absolutely struck by someone. It was one of the wine buyers at Morrison's, and she was having a really, really tough time. And I think people go through varying different degrees of symptoms, severity, timing wise, duration wise. So everyone is completely different. I think if you can be honest about what you're going through, I think that's hugely helpful for the people that you work with as well. I've worked with people who have been really, really candid about it, and they felt a lot better for it. And actually it helps me because, at the end of the day, if someone's having a bit of a rough time, you just need to cut them some slack. And unless people know about it, they can't really make adjustments. And you might go about doing things in a slightly different way if you had an awareness of where that person particularly was. But for now, for me personally, I will continue to deny its existence and pretend it's not going to happen to me.
Brilliant, thank you. Okay, Katie says, she's increasingly I've moved from plumbing and heating to food packaging, and the pace astounded me from MPD to procurement, etc. Have you noticed that coming the other way, so coming away from food into our environment? Have you noticed that coming the other way, and how are you managing it? So the difference between pace, the pace is what Katie.
The pace is massively different, and I think going the other way would be a real shock to the system. I probably came from a bit of an extreme as well, because food is fast, because it is fast. It changes day to day, and particularly in the part of the sector I was in fresh, you don't make a decision today, you've got to build tomorrow. That's how quickly those sorts of things move. Supply chains are in hours sometimes. So yeah, that is massively different. I couldn't believe my Christmas, actually. It felt like it just felt wrong. It felt completely alien. It was, I said it was, the quietest Christmas, including the one I had off on maternity leave. So it's very, very different. That I do struggle with it, actually, because I want to get things done and try and get it done quickly. But the reality is the customer habits are just so different. So it just doesn't work like food. But no, I can completely understand, making that transition from this industry into packaging food packaging would be quite a stark contrast. But no, I've certainly found it. But going the other way, it's more a reflection. In a way, it's an opportunity to be a bit more considered and a bit more thoughtful and planned. But yeah, sometimes I definitely find myself, I'm institutionalized to it. And particularly in, Morrison's private equity owned retailer, it was constantly changing. You were going into your trading meetings on a Monday and Tuesday for things that were changing into the weekend, TV campaigns, advertising, promotional activity. You would just change it like that, and it would impact the performance as well. Whereas it doesn't quite work like that. So that is, I guess, an adjustment I continue to try and get straight, really. But yeah, very, very, very different.
Okay, thank you for that. And then Alice has said, is there anything that you think we could learn from the food industry and your experience to drive more inclusivity? And I think in terms of your experience to drive more inclusivity and remove unconscious bias, anything we can learn from what they did in the food industry around how do we become more inclusive and remove unconscious bias in our industry?
I think, look, it does exist in other industries. I mean, I spent the last 10 years in the meat industry, and that was very, very similar. I think things like this are hugely helpful, and I think anything that you can do as a female to support other females in your organisation is hugely powerful. But in all honesty, the food industry is doing things like that. So I used to do quite a lot of things, and I still keep in touch with them now. Actually, there was, we've got CIC. I was part of Meat Business Women, run by an impressive lady called Laura Ryan, who has taken that on from strength to strength, and that was grounded in meat, because that was probably one of the more extreme examples of it being very, very male dominated. Trading offices, fist banging on the desk, ultimately selling into abattoirs, which invariably are, generally speaking, male colleagues who work in that environment. And she's done an awful lot and has started to extend that out beyond just meat as well. So maintaining, because there was a sense of almost with like being part of it, we'd built a bit of a tribe, and it was great because we used to get some brilliant speakers. A lot of the big manufacturers would really lean in and support initiatives. And I think doing these sorts of things and making sure that actually we are bringing in all of the different facets of the wider industry as well. The merchanting world, the manufacturing world, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think the more of that can be done, the better, really. But that was the main one that existed in food. As organisations, and Morrison's was very good at this, actually. Giving people broadening opportunities, so taking them out with their core functional experience and giving them a bit of breadth to drive confidence, different perspectives. Not bias per se, but certainly giving, definitely making sure that women had their opportunities in the more senior roles. And I think when I left, so we would have had sort of the top 100 leaders in the organisation. It wasn't far off 50-50. And that was right the way across all of the functions as well, from retail operations, commercial, marketing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think some functions were better than others, but I think commercial probably always lagged a little bit. I was saying to someone the other day, I've only ever had one female line manager in my career.
Wow.
And that was the first one. So 25 years ago.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to be learned, but I think certainly, you know, platforms like this are super helpful in terms of driving that inclusion. And I guess anything you can do to tell your story as well. You know, we've created an opportunity for me to tell mine. We're doing some stuff for International Women's Day internally as well. So, you know, trying to find some platforms across the calendar year that mean actually it's not just a one-hit wonder. Actually, you can keep, you know, keep set pieces and opportunities for people to gather and share their stories. And I think it's always so powerful to hear. So I've managed to get a few volunteers to come and help me and Maxine do some stuff internally for International Women's Day. And, you know, a bit like I have done here, you know, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that my career's been absolutely sparkling and there's been no issues and I've never cocked anything up, because that will be A, not true, and B, really unhelpful.
Yeah. Great. Any other questions from anyone before we say thank you to Liz? Well, it looks like we've run out of questions in the chat, but anyone else got any last minute questions? No. So Liz, you're welcome to stay. Do you think you will, or will you are you leaving us now?
No, I'm going to stay if that's all right.
Okay, great, that's great. Okay, welcome to stay. Brilliant. So thank you so much for your time and sharing your story. And I know everybody here really enjoys hearing these stories and getting the hints and tips. I'm sure I've made a whole list of notes. I'm sure others have as well. So yeah, there we go. Thanks very much. Okay, so Nikki, we'll put the slides back on.
Yeah. So thanks, Liz. I really enjoyed that. So casting our minds back to November and the topic of imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is that, just to remind ourselves, that persistent inner experience of doubting your abilities and downplaying your achievements, fearing that any moment you might get found out, despite clear evidence that you are in fact competent. Imposter syndrome doesn't discriminate by talent or success. In fact, it often shows up most strongly in high-performing and driven professionals. So during that session, we took a look at the commonly described 5 main imposter syndromes, which I think, yes, thank you, Anthea, on the next slide. If you're anything like me, then you may have spotted elements of all of them that show up in you. But to remind ourselves of the five types, they were the perfectionist, who sets impossibly high standards and feels like a failure when they're not met. The expert, who never feels they know enough and is always chasing one more credential. The soloist, who feels like asking for help is a sign of weakness. The natural genius, who believes things should come easily and often equates effort and inadequacy. And the superhuman, who believes that their worth is measured by how much they can do and how well they can do it all at the same time. And this one had the most hands up in the room in November, and we all thought that we would like to take a look more closely at the superhuman pattern. I think the reason it resonated is because it shows up so powerfully and repeatedly in professional women. The superhuman feels an internal pressure to excel in every single role, to be outstanding at work, supportive to others, endlessly capable, emotionally available, and composed under pressure. Rest doesn't feel like it's earned, feels indulgent. Saying no feels like a failure. Success is rarely celebrated. Only the next thing to get done is what really matters. So if you can move to the next slide, please, Anthea. Reflecting on all of that, we're just going to take a minute and we want you to type one word in the chat, please, describing how work feels for you on busy days. Yeah.
Okay, we're starting to come through. Oops, oh my gosh. So shall I read some about Nikki? So we've got daunting,
Yep.
draining, relentless, overwhelming, hectic, overwhelming.
Yeah, well, overwhelming was going to be
Yeah.
mine. I needn't type it now.
juggling, full on, frustrating, overwhelming, draining, adrenaline fueled. There's 2 words, yeah. Exhausting, relentless, overwhelming, exhausting, juggling, exciting, and pumping. Oh, that's a good one. And relentless. So there we go. There's a lot of overwhelming in there.
A lot of overwhelm, yeah. I'm sure none of those came as a massive surprise, but in professional women, so the superhuman pattern often shows up as chronic overworking, taking on more responsibility than is sustainable, and tying your self-worth directly to productivity and performance. And it can often look like the go-to problem solver, the emotional stabilizer, the unofficial team lead, the knowledge safety net, and just, you know, the person who just sorts things out. So I think next we're going to do a poll, which I think Angela, you're going to introduce, if you don't mind, please.
So in a minute, we're going to do a poll, and we're just going to ask you to vote. So there's 5 options here, and we're asking you to vote for the one that shows up most for you, because don't say they all show up, because they probably do all show up, but read through them and vote for the one that shows up most for you. So in a minute, we'll launch the poll, but the options are: I step in before being asked, I struggle to switch off mentally, I feel responsible for outcomes I don't fully control, I take work because it feels faster than explaining, I become the safety net for others. So just reflect on what those are. Now, Jane's going to open the poll, and I think to see the poll, we have to click out of the chat. So click your chat, and at the bottom of your screen, on the bottom right-hand side, there's a little 6 dots next to the chat box. Meeting tools. I think if we click in there, and we click in there, and then you'll see one live. There's a list of things, including polls, and you should see one live poll. Can people see that? Can you see that, Nikki? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, people are there already. And then if you haven't voted, vote for your option there. Can people see the results of the poll?
You do. Do you have? I think you have to press vote as well, don't you? Yeah.
So I've pressed the button saying show everyone the results. So hopefully you can see the. Can you see those results, Nikki?
Yes.
You can.
Yep,
good.
Yeah.
Good. Brilliant. Fine. So what do we got? Got 29 votes. Not everyone has voted, but so most popular. 11 votes for I struggle to switch off mentally. 12 for that now. 8 votes for I feel responsible for outcomes I don't fully control. 6 votes I become the safety net for others. And then there's 1 vote for I take on work because it feels faster than explaining, and 1 for I step in before being asked.
I step in before being asked.
6, sorry, yeah. And of course, I know you would have wanted to tick more than 1, but we've asked you just to vote for 1. Okay.
Interesting.
Yeah. I don't think that surprises me at all. What's there, but yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Next slide. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So all of this can come at a significant personal and organizational cost. For example, personal costs. So your exhaustion disguises capability, resentment. Why always me? Why am I always the one? Less time for growth or strategic work, and identity tied to output, and actually organizational costs. So dependency patterns, capability gaps staying hidden, workload imbalances, and slower innovation and decision speed. Some of those costs. So superhuman imposters don't just doubt themselves, they overcompensate by carrying more than their role, their capacity, or their energy was ever designed to hold. So I think we're just going to go into a little bit of reflection now.
Yeah.
So we're just going to take a few minutes to complete these sentences.
Yeah. So shall I take on for this? So people can just spend a couple of minutes just yourself and answer the question yourself. You don't have to say that out loud right now, but think about, I step in fastest when. What's happening when you step in fastest? I feel most responsible for. Write that down, and I struggle to let go of. If everyone just has a go at just jotting those 3 sentences down and just finishing the sentence, just for 2 minutes. I'm not sure whether that's 2 minutes, but it must be getting close now. So what we want you to do next, go back into the chat box and just type in for us one thing that you wish you could step back from. You don't have to provide the context, just one thing that you wish you could step back from, and let's see what people have identified and put that in the chat box. Who's going to go first? One thing you wish you could step back from. Here we go. Is that a tough question? One thing we get here, it's coming now. Yeah. So we've got managing people, always providing the answer, the solution. Oh my gosh, they're all coming in now. Just lost. Go back to the top. Always providing the solution, answer the solution. Step back from the detail. The constant feeling that I should be doing better. The painful admin processes. Saying yes to everything. There's one certain aspect of her role, Kelly saying that she wished she could step back from. Hand-holding managers, the role I used to do. Often that when you move roles, you find you're still doing the role that you used to do, especially if you've been promoted. Verifying every solution, spreading across too many projects or tasks, saying yes to every meeting, saying too many yeses, trying to compensate for poor leaders, the guilt when I do take time out, people working, making decisions in silos, saying yes, I can do that for you, putting everyone above myself and always saying yes, guilt when I take time out for the family, saying yes, fighting for every decision, being the go-to knowledge person in the team rather than having them having confidence in their own knowledge, feeling responsible for other people's feelings at work. Wow, huge list there, a huge list there, and all of those I think are really, really normal responses. And I guess the point to make out with this superhuman imposter type is that high performers, which the fact that you're here and you want to know about this probably means you are a high performer, often take on responsibility for things that they don't actually control. It's just one of the downsides of being a high performer is you often take on more than you should. And examples of that, things like that we take responsibility for other people's preparation. So rather than relying on others to prepare, we either prepare for them or we help them prepare. We take responsibility for the mood of the team. We take responsibility for the reactions of our stakeholders. We take the responsibility for any politics that relate to the work that we're doing. And we also take responsibility for how quickly others learn. And that can be, think about all those feelings we talked about earlier, that can feel exhausting and overwhelming and not particularly helpful. So what we wanted to do before we break into the breakout groups in a minute is I wanted just to share with you some of the beliefs that drive this over-functioning behavior that drives this superhuman imposter syndrome. And one of the things I'd say about the beliefs, which I'm going to take you through in a minute, is these beliefs all stem from something that probably probably once served us really well. So, I mean, if you're still quite early in your career and you're listening to this, some of these things might be things to watch out for as you progress your career. But often these beliefs that we have are because they worked for us well at some point, but they may not be working well for us now. And the first belief that I want to talk about is responsibility equals worth, and that's, you know, if the belief that if I'm not carrying it, I'm not valuable. And that belief stems from a deeper drivers around the desire to be needed, because if we feel like we're needed, if we feel more secure, we feel like we belong, we feel like we won't be overlooked, that can be, that underlying driver for that belief could be fear of disappointment. Can be that, you know, we don't ever want to drop the ball because we don't want to be shown up or get things wrong. Again, it could be because in our early career we believe that by being that person who put their hands up, that said I'll do that, you got visibility, you got praise, you got promotion. So that might be a reason behind that. The second belief on here is around visibility equals security. So that's thinking if I'm not involved, I might be exposed, or I'm actually replaceable. I'm not going to be needed, and that again can stem from fear of you know not being wanted. It can be that you see success is that people have to see you doing the work for success. It could stem from having job security anxiety. You know, if things run without me, where do I stand? You know, my role might be taken out of the structure. It can be to do with reputational. You know, you think that if you are not present, something might go wrong, and your credibility might suffer. Or it could be, you know, due to in the past you have been overlooked because you weren't visible. So you thought, well, I need to be involved because in the past I've been overlooked when I haven't been visible. So those might be some of the reasons that drive that one. And then we've got competence equals self-sufficiency. If I need help, I'm failing. And again, this relates to maybe a fear of being exposed, of people thinking you don't know enough. It might be because you've just got really high personal standards. It might be because when you, again, early in your career, you got rewarded for being independent and low maintenance and not needing lots of supervision and solving problems on your own. So you've taken that as I need to be someone who continues to do things on my own. And it could be from you misunderstanding that as you grow up through the ranks, as you become a leader of others, that you are allowed to say that I don't know. You are allowed to say that you need support, that you are allowed not to have the answer. Some of the stuff that Liz was saying earlier, it's okay as a leader to be able to say that I don't have all the answers, but maybe in early career we didn't feel that was the case. And then the last one on here, and I added this one actually this morning because I was Maxine was going to do this slide, and when I actually looked at this, when I looked at this, I thought one of my beliefs is missing from here, and that's that belief. If it's faster for me to do it, I should. And this is a belief that, you know, efficiency means I'm efficient if I'm actually doing it. And again, that particular belief stems from maybe believing that well, if I tell someone else how to do it, it's actually going to take longer. Or it might be because if I ask someone else to do it, they may struggle and I don't want them to struggle. Or if I give it to someone else, the quality might drop, or I'll lose control, or I might look inefficient because they don't do it as well as I do it. Or I might have to tolerate that someone's either slower, or I might feel uncomfortable while someone's learning. So those are all some of the underlying beliefs behind that sort of belief about if it's faster for me to do what I should. So and that's with Superhuman Impostor, a lot of it stems from some of these underlying beliefs that we've picked up in our careers or in our lives, and messages we've picked up. What I'd love to know, and again, back in the chat box, this was something. I'm trying to. I don't know if there's anything in the chat box people want me to know to mention in relation to this. I'm struggling to know if there's anything in here that needs to be to come off mute if you do want to say something. But what I'm asking you to do now is ask yourself, which of these beliefs do you think you hold, and which one for you is the hardest for you to challenge? So if you look at those, and when I was reading them out, which do you think, oh yeah, that's me? Just type the number, belief 1, 2, 3, or 4, and let's just have a look and see what we've got. So you can see a couple of 2s, a couple of 4s, lots of 2s, lots of 4s, 3 and 4, 2s. Yeah, but 4 definitely seems to be the most popular from what I can see. Can you see the list, Nikki? I think 4 is probably the most popular. The belief that it's faster for me. If it's faster for me to do it, then I should.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm not really surprised about that, to be honest,
Mhm.
based on the conversation we had this morning. But for me, it was a toss-up between 2 and 4. I went 2 in the end, but 4 I can totally understand.
And some of them overlap, don't they? Some of them overlap. So I mean, when I went back to research this around why that belief 4 was missing from the original description of beliefs, the answer I got back was actually you can probably see that belief 4 shows up in belief 1, 2, and 3 as well. Hayley, you've put your hand up.
Yeah, it was just to Nikki's point about kind of the 2 and 4 thing. I think part of 2 is right for me, so I feel like I have to be visible, but I'm not necessarily worried about because I might be replaceable if I'm not. It's more because I feel like I need to be present and seen around the business, if that makes sense. Not because I'm worried. So it's kind of a half.
Yeah, that just makes sense.
Yeah. And I think, some of the stuff I was saying before, that visibility one can be, because you fear not being seen, but it can be, it can be for a number of reasons. It can be because you want, your reputation is really important to you, so you want people to see what you do. It can be that before you may have had past experiences where when you weren't visible, you weren't thought of for promotions or for products, or your work was unnoticed. So that there may be other reasons why that's strong for you, not just because you feel exposed or replaceable. Okay. But I think it's for people to start for people who've recognized themselves in some of these, to start to reflect on, so why do I hold that belief, and how can I reframe it? And in a minute we're going to move into a breakout discussion to talk about that, but just some examples. I mean, some of the reframes that you can use to reframe some of this stuff is, your value is your judgment and your thinking, not the volume. So it's not about how much work you do, but it's how your judgment you show and the thinking behind your work, not the volume of work. And as you get more senior, these become really, really important reframes, because you can't continue doing everything. Your role is in creating clarity. So certainly if you're leading a team, your role is not to absorb the chaos in the team, but it's actually to create clarity for the team and show direction and set the direction and keep people heading in the right direction. Another reframe here is your success is outcomes and capability, not personal heroics. So you measure your success about what you actually deliver, not about how much time and effort you put into it, but really what you actually deliver. And then and this last one is slightly odd words, but efficiency in the moment can create dependency in the system. This is, if you think, this goes back to that number 4, the number 4 belief, which, remind myself what we called it again, efficiency equals doing. Efficiency in the moment might mean that the team become dependent on you, and what we as leaders, you need a team who can be self-sufficient and do things themselves. So the longer term gain is to delegate and give work to other people, not do it yourself, because otherwise you create dependency on you. So those are sort of things to think about. Now, what we're going to ask people, what we're going to do in a minute, and I think hopefully in the background, Jane's setting up the breakout groups. We're going to ask everybody to go into breakout room for about 20 minutes. Now I've actually emailed the slides to people, because you might find you need the slides to be able to do the breakout activity. And I think I can actually share them. I've tried sharing them in the chat as well. So, but hopefully you've got an email No, I'm only allowed to. I'm going to cancel that. I'm only allowed to share the slides with people who are on Google Meet, so I'm not going to worry that. But they are in your email. So in a minute, we're going to put you into breakout group. We're going to ask you in the breakout groups to first of all just choose one of those 4 beliefs, and say if you've got the slides to have a look at, and just have a conversation about where does that belief show up? Where does it show up? In your current role, in your current team, your organization? What do we think this belief makes people do? What would be a healthier version of the belief? So if we were to reframe that belief, what would be a healthier version of that reframe be? And there's some examples in the slides I've just shown you. And then most importantly, what behavior shift could we make to challenge this belief? So pick one belief, work through it, and we've got 20 minutes. So you might have time to do 2 beliefs, or you might even have time to do 3 beliefs. But the idea is to pick a belief, work through it, make sure you feel clear about how does it show up, what does this belief mean we do, and then what behavior shift could we do to actually challenge this belief and do things slightly differently. And Vicky, you haven't got the email. Somebody in your group will have the slides. I'm sure they will, so don't worry about it. It's just I wanted to make sure everyone had got them. But the aim, I know people like these breakout groups, so use the opportunity to introduce yourself to people you don't know already as well, but have a really good chat around at least one belief. But ideally, if you can do more than one, that's great. And then when you come back to the main group in 20 minutes time, we are going to ask for just a few bits of feedback. Let me just tell you what I'm going to ask you for, so you can so we'd like to hear from each group. We'd like to hear about a belief you want to challenge and how you're going to challenge it, and we'd like to hear some examples of the behavior shifts that people in the group are going to make to challenge these beliefs. Let's just go on to the debrief slide now. So just like to hear from a group, and like to hear about just from at least one person in each group. So just you may not have had a chance to say who's going to pop up, so just pop up if you feel comfortable, and I will then mention names if nobody does. Maybe to either share a belief you want to challenge, or a behavioral shift that you talked about making that would really help us combat the superhuman imposter. So anyone willing to go first? I'll open the chat box as well.
I don't mind starting, Anthea.
Okay, brilliant.
So in my group, we spoke about the visibility belief that we were going to challenge. We had a couple of examples that the ladies gave, but from a behaviour shift, it was not feeling pressured to do more.
Yeah.
Take on more. And in the example we had, it was about going on maternity leave and coming back, and not also feeling pressured to come back sooner than you would do due to situations as well. Yep,
brilliant. Anyone else have talked about the visibility one? So that wants to share what they talked about doing differently. So visibility equals security. Anyone else want to talk about visibility? No. So I mean, an important mantra maybe to think as we get more senior in roles as well, is that being less involved doesn't make us less important in our jobs. It actually makes our contribution more powerful. And I certainly see this with I was smiling when Liz was talking, because introverts often, they say less in meetings, but when they do speak in meetings, people listen because what they say is more powerful, and maybe because they don't speak as often. And maybe that's the same with visibility, that sometimes if you're less involved, when you are involved, your contribution could be more powerful. So maybe something to think about there. So anyone else wanted to say anything else around how you would behavior shift around that visibility I forgot what's called. I mean, forgot what I said it was called now. Anyway, the visibility equals security belief. Is everyone all right with that? Okay, so should we hear from a different group about something different then? It's someone who's done one of the other beliefs, or a different action, different behavioural shift.
Yeah, Anthea, it's Catherine here.
Hi, Catherine, which you do.
Yeah, and actually that's really interesting what you've just said, because I'm terrible for filling silences. In fact, I'm doing it now, aren't I? So, but we talked about
goodness.
Yeah, That's true.
Yeah.
We talked about the responsibility equaling worth,
Yep.
and we were exploring that as women we tend to take on the extracurricular activities. I mean, actually, this is one of them, isn't it?
Yeah.
In a way,
Yeah.
a wonderful one.
Yep.
And all the stuff that we feel that we have to do on top of every day, and actually it perhaps puts us at a disadvantage, because men are a lot more straightforward. They'll just turn up and do the job and focus on the job, and perhaps maybe do better because they're not thinking about everything else. So we talked around that, and it gives us no choice to prioritize, and actually in extreme cases you can lead to burnout because you end up being a busy fool. I'm not going to embarrass the person on here, but somebody on this call actually gave me some really good advice how to overcome this. And that's almost when all this extra stuff, the responsibility, the work is yes but and no but. You can say yes to it, but something else has to give, or if saying no, you're meeting something halfway. So that was something that I think we discussed and resonated.
Yeah, thank you for that. Anyone else got anything on that responsibility? The responsibility equals worth one, that with the belief I'm not carrying it, I'm not valuable. Anyone else had any suggested behavioural shifts you could make for that? No. And another one, what I'd point out with that one is something just to think about. What made you successful at one, if we're talking about work, because I know with this we're not just talking about work, we're probably talking about work and what they call the unpaid work, the unofficial housekeeping work that we always take on as well. But if you think about work as well, just work for a minute, what makes you successful at one level? So when, again, we going back to when you were early in your career and you were trying to prove yourself and show everybody how competent you were, so you basically said yes to everything and you delivered it all. Could actually, if you continue on that vein, by continue to do everything, actually quietly traps you at the next level, because the next level you need to be able to delegate and give it to other people and grow other people. Jen, do you want to say something there?
Just exactly on that, Andrew. I was just saying to our group as we came back, actually, there is a really brilliant book called What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And it's about just that. And I was saying this, that's been sort of one of my struggles. You get rewarded for doing throughout your whole career, don't you? And then suddenly, I said it in my group, I say it loads, like, I haven't really got a proper job, so I don't know what I do anymore. So where is my work coming from? That's a really, really good book, I would say, if anybody kind of is in that place of how do I make that adjustment to feel, and it's feeling differently about yourself as much as anything. And
I guess it's getting your reward and satisfaction through watching others grow and develop rather than yourself, and it's changing that mindset, isn't it, that my role is to be the person who grows and develops the team, rather than not just about growing and developing myself anymore. And anyway, it's you have to be less selfish. You have to think about the broader group, which is a nice thing for us to all. We don't all of us don't want to be selfish, do we? Okay, so that's great. So what about the another group? So we've done a little bit on the responsibility equals worth belief. We've done a little bit on the visibility one. Did anyone talk about the competence? Get my words right straight.
Self-sufficient.
Anyone to have a conversation about that, about the belief?
We started but didn't have really enough time to finish it, but we started talking about, actually, is some of this grounded in kind of your personal background and the values you have and how you're brought up a little bit. So a couple of people in our group talked about, actually, like their mother was kind of did everything in the house, so kind of taught them to do everything and those kind of things. And then we kind of skipped quite quickly to kind of maybe a behaviour shift without kind of going through the other questions. But actually, things like leaning into your weaknesses. Someone had an example of where they moved into a new role and knew nothing about what the team that they were managing, but actually they kind of shared that and communicated that with everybody and kind of didn't try and hide behind it. So but that was literally the last 2 or 3 minutes of our time.
Okay, that's fine.
We did speak about this one.
Yeah.
We talked about sort of this reluctance to ask for help, this perception that, excuse me, asking for help is a weakness, and we spoke about that, and about how that can then lead you to kind of doing more than you need to, because it's going to be harder to get to the right place if you haven't asked the right person the right question. And we were talking about how maybe we could reframe that asking for help as asking for clarity, and asking for kind of, can I just bounce a few ideas off you? This is where my head's at. Where have you got a different view? So rather than framing it as, actually, I don't know what I'm doing here, can I ask for help? You don't have, if it's really, really uncomfortable for you to be that blunt, kind of try and reframe it a little bit around, can I just get a bit of clarity on, would you mind just going through this with me again? Can I bounce these ideas off you? That type of thing. And then behavior shifts around maybe finding who those trusted people are at first to start with, and then as you get, your confidence grows with asking for help, and that should then make it easier, because you'll find that the results actually make it a lot easier on you.
That's good. Great. Yeah. Anyone else got anything else on that one? Some of the stuff I've got in my notes is that it's strong performers use support strategically. So strong performers they're not sole performers, they use support. The smartest people ask earlier. I hadn't really thought about it before, but if you're really, really clever and you know as a leader you don't have the answers, then the quicker you ask, the quicker you can get support. And involving others is not incompetence, it's leverage. It helps everybody grow. And I guess again, the more as we grow in organizations, the more senior we get, we have to accept the more ambiguity there is in roles. And it's just part of career progression, is that we don't know it all. There's more ambiguity, and that, you know, and earlier in our careers, we mentioned this before, you know, being self-sufficient really, really enabled us to get on, but actually later in careers it actually gets in the way by being self-sufficient. You have to rely on other people, so we have to like reframe. It's actually a strength to ask for help. It's a strength to have to leverage others. Okay, fine. And then the last one, which was around efficiency equals doing. Did anyone have a conversation about efficiency equals doing, and what that means, and what we should do to combat it? That was a really popular one in the chat, so I'd be surprised if people didn't have conversations about it. Who's going to be brave enough to?
We talked about this quite a lot at length, and the sort of the conclusion was, we came down to the fact that we often sort of exhibit these behaviours because we're being impatient, or we have a degree of not necessarily a lack of trust, but there's that sort of self-sufficiency thing coming in again. You want to get on with it, you just get on and do it. And in terms of the behaviour change, it was sort of, and I like the idea, I can't remember the lady's name who said the yes, but. I think we need to sort of challenge ourselves in terms of thinking, yes, but if I carry on doing these same behaviours and always leaning in and doing it myself, you're missing out on the chance of developing somebody else. But also, what else are you going to be missing out of? That reward of, if you are less efficient doing everybody else's bit, what are you going to be able to focus on doing yourselves, and sort of to reward yourself mentally to put in that time in either to train and develop other people, or sort of just stepping back a bit and do it. Let somebody else take that bit on. I'm sure loads of other people had loads of other bits in there as well.
Anyone want to build on that?
Yeah, I'll jump in. We very briefly spoke about this in our group, and it was almost we got to the point of where we were talking around approach at home. So I've got a 16-year-old young lad that just the dishwasher or the washing machine just doesn't do the stuff that I would want him to do. It's super quick and efficient for me to do it and put the clothes away, but the bigger picture is, I want this young man, well-rounded, ability to be independent, and it's having that vision. So it's ensuring that whilst it's definitely faster and more efficient for me personally, but it's in developing others. So as when you're taking workload on, think around, you know, it's not just about my tasks, my thoughts, my feelings. It's around that individual and making sure you give them the ability to develop and be that independent, strong individual that can handle that workload.
Yeah, it's really good. That's really good. And something I've got written here, short term, by doing it in the short term, doing everything, it's faster, but in the long term, we become the bottleneck. And in a leadership role, we prevent others growing and developing, and we can apply that to our children as well, because we prevent them growing and developing if we don't let them make mistakes and do it wrong and put the dishes in the wrong place. But in work, and you mentioned this, I think, Natalie, if by doing we've got less time to do the bigger stuff, the more strategic thinking, the step back and do the bigger picture stuff. So we're not doing ourselves a service if we don't step back and stop doing everything. Has anyone got anything else any other behavior shift, or that they'd like to, any other ideas that people go, well, that's a great idea that they shared in the group that we would like to share, just to help people think about what they might do differently? Anyone else want to speak up before we wrap up? Okay, so just I guess before I hand back to Nikki, do some closing comments and some personal commitments. I just want to reiterate something that's really become clear to me while doing the research for this, is that the belief that we have against, that create this superhuman imposter are often be formed because they worked for us at some point in our career. So that they're there because they have worked. And the goal isn't to completely remove them, but it's to recognize they're there and they may be out of date. Those beliefs might be out of date and they might be holding us back, and they may need a bit of reframing, so we don't need to run our lives by them. So hopefully people go away and have a rethink about some of the stuff that we do and why we do it and what we need to do differently in order to address that superhuman imposter. I will hand back to Nikki now for a few closing comments, and then Nikki at the end, I want to just say a few words about the International Women's Day Coffee with Sessions. Yeah. Oh, Nikki, you're on mute.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, no worries. So yeah, just before we close today's session, we just take 2 minutes to reflect on the breakout sessions and complete using the insights from the conversations that we've just had, and complete the following 3 sentences. I will stop automatically. I will start asking. I will protect energy for. Just 2 minutes, because we're getting really short of time. Okay, Anthea, shall we move just to the next slide? And then just as you're coming towards the end of those sentences, if you don't mind hopping back into the chat, just one word around what you would want work life to feel like in 6 months. We're just getting a few words here through. Anthea, balanced, confident.
Abundant, we've got.
Yes,
rewarding.
Amazing one. I love that.
Yeah. Lots of balanced, confident. Yeah.
Peaceful. That's nice.
Yeah.
So just while you can carry on writing the words if you want to, feel free, but I just lastly just want to say thanks once again to Liz and to everyone else for taking the time out to join us today. I hope you've enjoyed the session and found it useful. I always do. The next session, I think, is face to face, is it not?
It is, yeah.
Showers in Nuneaton. So Anthea will send more details out of that, but it will be really exciting to see everyone face to face again. And I'll just quickly hand back to Anthea now, and she can do her bit on International Women's Day. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Nikki. So yes, the next session is going to be all around career development and how we progress our careers. But we haven't shaped it yet. But date for your diary, 2nd of June. If you definitely want to come, email us and we'll send you the invite. And Emily and Tina from Triton Showers are hosting us, so I hope to see you there. But before then, throughout the month of March, I don't know whether you guys have seen this, but there's a program. There's 13 different sessions that we call coffee with leaders driving equity. So we've got senior leaders from across our coalition businesses doing anything from 45 minutes to an hour and a half sessions, where some of them are panels, some of them are 2 people, some of them are interviews, some of them are just speakers like we've had today, but senior women talking about their careers, talking about the challenges they faced, and inviting as many women as possible from different member businesses to come and join. So if you I can't remember whether you Natalie, did you see, I see Natalie, did you receive the newsletter, the coalition newsletter? No, but probably means, looking blank, probably means that it hasn't gone out yet. I will send to this group the programme event. I'll send the newsletter to you all and the programme of events, and please sign up and please encourage other people. And there's about 13 different sessions during March, so come to some of them, come to 1 or 2, just and encourage others to come to join in.
Anthea, I've had the newsletter,
Yeah,
so
I
think it has gone out.
It has gone out to the Elevate group. Yeah. Okay.
Well,
so
I've seen it too. But,
you'll see it. You'll see it 'cause you're on the steering group. It's wondered whether people that hadn't. But but if you haven't got it, email me and I'll send you the full program. But share it widely in your organisations. Let's try and encourage people who haven't been to Elevate yet to come to one of these. And I'm hoping by the time we get through March, Elevate will have doubled in size, because we'll tell everybody about Elevate in these sessions as well. Or we'll have loads more people. So yeah. Okay. So I think that's any questions for anyone before we wrap up? So Kelly says she hasn't received the newsletter. Okay. Maybe I'll just send it out to this group again. It won't hurt just to send it out again, will it? Yeah. Okay. Brilliant. Fantastic. I think that's so. See you all again in June, but hopefully see a lot of you in some of those sessions during March as well. Thanks everyone for joining us today.